Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Ooh, that was very kind of you. It's my first time back preaching or sharing, so today's going to be a hybrid sharing and preaching as I return from my sabbatical. And so my topic today is about Sabbath. So let's get started. The Sabbath is based on this particular event in the Bible. Genesis 2:2-3 says, following the time that God had created everything in the world in 6 days, by the seventh day, God had finished the work he had been doing. So on the seventh day, he rested from all his work. Then God blessed the seventh day and made it holy, because on it he rested from all the work of creating that he had done. So we see in this passage at the very beginning of the creation of all things, the 6 days of creating and work that God does to make everything that exists. He takes time to rest. And he blesses that time. It says he blesses this space of time where he can sit back and see what he has made and say, it is good. This comes up again for us in the 10 Commandments, where God gives to Moses this fourth commandment out of the 10. And it reads, as it says on the screen, remember the Sabbath day by keeping it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the seventh day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. On it you shall not do any work, neither you, nor your son or daughter, nor your male or female servant, nor your animals, or any foreigner residing in your towns. For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth, the sea, and all that is in them, but he rested on the seventh day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and made it holy. So the 10 Commandments are pretty important, as you can imagine. You shall have no other God except me. You will not make idols. And do not profane the name of God. And of course, the Sabbath. This is the last of the first 4 commandments that relate with God himself. Everything after this, honoring your parents, not murdering anyone, it's not committing adultery, all that other stuff, is about your relationship with people around you. So the Sabbath day, a lot of times people don't know what exactly to do with it. Because how does it fit? How does it fit into our relationship with God? And why is it that bridge into our relationship with our moms and dads, with our families, and with the other people who live? We're going to explore some of that. And what happens is, this is in Exodus, after the people of God in Israel were freed from Egypt. They go to Sinai, they receive the 10 Commandments, but as they go to Canaan, they don't quite obey God, and they are wandering in the desert. And then you run into the book of Deuteronomy, in which this command is repeated once again. Deuteronomy is just a fancy term for the second saying of the law. So the second time they go over this. And the 10 Commandments are going to show up. And this passage shows up as well. But I want you to note that there is a little bit of a change. This is from Exodus, when they first received. And this is from Deuteronomy. The last words in the Exodus passage says, therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and made it holy, just like from Genesis. God blessed that day. But how is Deuteronomy different? Let me read it for you. Therefore the Lord your God has commanded you to observe the Sabbath day. If you look at it on the surface, you might say, that's no big difference, right? Make the Sabbath holy. Observe it. Doesn't it mean the same thing? How does it feel for you? What's the difference? What do you think the difference is? Anyone? This is not the rhetorical part. Tell me, what do you think? What's different between these two ways of saying almost the same thing? Do you notice it? Just shout it out from where you are. Anyone?
One seems like an invitation, whereas the other seems like a command.
Bingo! Yeah, you got it right on. First time, first try. In the first one, it sounds like an invitation. The second time, it's a command. That is not a subtle change. Although on the surface, it might be interpreted as such. So as the people of God move forward, it has shifted from even the words of Genesis itself, which it says, God blessed that day. And even in Exodus, when he first gives it to the people, when you get to Deuteronomy, it's a reinterpretation of those same words as the people have lived. And instead of seeing it as a blessing of that day, they see it as a command and obligation that's handed down. This trajectory will, unfortunately, continue even to our day. So I thought I'd do something that would be interesting, and that is ask the question, how Sabbathy are you? Sabbathy is not a real word, I made it up, so why not? And what I'm going to ask you to do is we're going to work through 4 questions. And there will be 2 kinds of outcomes, and you have to ask yourself, which one do I lean towards? Okay? Which one do I lean towards? And for this exercise, I'm going to ask you maybe to find someone to chat with, to share with them which one you lean towards. And to be honest, there's no judgment about this, okay? I want you to know you're not better or worse for picking one or the other, but what it indicates for you, for yourself, is how open you are to the reality of what God intends with the Sabbath. Okay, does that make sense? So find someone to chat with. Find a partner to say hello to. If there's one person left out, a group of 3 is fine. Say hello. Yes, introduce yourself. That's good. Cross the aisle if you so dare. Move around. Find someone to chat with. This is the exercise part of our message. How Sabbathy are you? Okay. So has everyone found a partner yet to chat with? I don't know, Christine, you have a pal? No? You too? Okay. Make sure you have someone to chat with. Are you ready? Here's the first question. How do you feel on a lazy day off? I feel peaceful. I know I am still a good person even when I rest. Or I feel anxious or guilty. I worry that I wasted my time and did not achieve anything. Okay, now chat with the other person. Which one are you? And try to be honest as you're willing, okay? If you don't want to be honest, that's okay. You say, oh yeah, I am so Sabbathy. Which one are you? So I'm going to give you just a minute or so to do that because we have 3 more to go. Okay. And if you want, you can explain why or whatever. That's okay. And remember, there's a spectrum between these 2 things. Which one are you? Okay, question number 2. I'm going to send it up. If someone criticizes your work, oh, that's always fun. How do you react? I separate my value from my work, my worth does not change, or I feel deeply hurt. It feels like they're saying I'm a failure, not just my task. Which one do you gravitate towards? And remember, it is a spectrum, but these are the clear ways of saying those things. Share with each other.
Are you like hard? Why do I find it like I think
Give you a few more seconds to visit that. I can tell from how you're chatting, it's not as simple as some of this. Some of these are aspirational, sometimes you're one or the other. Sometimes it depends on who's criticizing you. There's a lot of things going on. Let me take you to the third question. This one's different. Why do you try to be kind to others? Because care and love are natural parts of being human, or because doing good deeds makes me a valuable and respected member of society. Check in on that. Remember, no judgment. Why do you try to be kind to others? So you're just answering what you gravitate towards more. And you can discuss nuances, if you so please. I'm going to move on to the final question in the Sabbathy. How Sabbathy are you? This is a good one. Do you need goals to feel satisfied with life? Now read this very carefully. I'm not saying you shouldn't have goals. This is not what the question is. I think you should have goals, actually. But do you need goals to feel satisfied with life itself? That's not the same thing as just having goals, okay? So this is not poo-pooing goals. This is just saying, do you need it? The first one is, no, just existing, learning, and experiencing life is enough for me. Or, yes, I need clear achievements, projects, or milestones to feel proud of myself. Discuss amongst yourselves. I hope you're having fun. This is meant to be fun. Keep going. So these 4 questions, I'm going to ask you to wind it up a little bit. These are actually just food for discussion, food for thought. My hope is that you'll take some of these questions home. Each of them, I'll review them really quick. How do you feel on a lazy day off? If someone criticizes your work, how do you react? Why do you try to be kind to others? And do you need goals to feel satisfied with life? Take these questions and really sort of, I notice some of you are having really good discussion about it because there's ambiguities within ourselves. Sometimes one of them is an ideal and one is the real. Sometimes we do both of these things depending on the situation and context. But the reality is those who gravitate towards the answers on the left, those who gravitate on those first answers are more open to being that made-up word, Sabbathy. Because their value, when you lean into that ideal or those thoughts, do not flow from what you do. They flow from what you are. And we'll talk a little bit more about this and how Sabbath comes into play. So, back to our Exodus, Deuteronomy section, back to the scriptures. One is an invitation, I love the way Gershom you've put it, and the other one is a command, an obligation. And this happens, in the time when they're about to enter the promised land, and it's going to extend for centuries until the time of Jesus. Because in Jesus' time, and the passage that was read for us by Andrew, is about Jesus and disciples walking through the field on a Sabbath day. And let me describe the Sabbath for you a little bit so you know a little bit more about Sabbath. Today is not the Sabbath day. Sunday is not Sabbath. A part of it is. I'll tell you how that works. Sabbath in the Jewish tradition is closer to the Saturday. Sunday is the first day of the week. And the Sabbath begins on Friday evening. When the sun goes down, that is the end of the day. Does that make sense? It's not our 24-hour clock that we have in our modern day. Theirs is when the sun comes up, and then when it goes down, that's half the day. The other day begins when the sun goes down. Next day started. So Sabbath begins often with a meal, with a dinner. And that's why you have Shabbat meals. Because as soon as the sun goes down, everyone gathers up and goes, it's the Sabbath. We're going to celebrate the Sabbath. And then that will carry on until the next sundown, which is the end of the day. The days end when the sun goes down. And the next day begins when the night has come in. So, there's some other stuff I need to unpack a little bit for us. which is that there are some who ask then, why do Christians worship on a Sunday? Right? That makes sense? Because that's not the Sabbath day. That's an error. Well, Christians put it this way. Well, some of them anyways. We actually celebrate the resurrection more than we celebrate the Sabbath. So we worship on the day of resurrection, the resurrection of Jesus, and it's not actually the Sabbath. So this is some historical information for you to get a hold of. If you talk to your Jewish friends, you know what they're doing Friday night. Well, some of them. Some might go clubbing, who knows. But that's a different story. And also, you should ask your Jewish friends what happens if they're above the Arctic Circle. Places like Canada, Norway, they have to work on it differently because they have the land of the midnight sun, and in which it's bright all day out. And technically, it's when the sun goes down, the Sabbath begins. It might never begin. I actually looked this stuff up. They actually try, they adjust for it in some way, but it's tough. Or there's some nights it's dark all the time, all day, right? That's the way it works in the Arctic Circle. So ask about that. But this is what happens. By the time you get from Deuteronomy all the way hundreds of years into Jesus' time, his disciples are walking through the field on the Sabbath day, probably during the day, so for us it's kind of like Saturday, and they're picking grain off the heads of the grain field and eating them. It's like you picking an apple, right? Or you see some berries by the side of the road. Make sure you get the right ones and not the bad ones. And they start eating them. But the Pharisees, in trying to return to what we call holiness, a way of being right with God, had put down an extra 300 plus rules for all the people to follow. Like, for example, if you were drinking water on the Sabbath day, you need to have a sieve so that you don't end up eating anything. Well, not on the Sabbath day, but in any time, because you're not allowed to eat insects and certain things. You have to have a sieve, and when you pour the water in, you catch everything that goes in, so you're only drinking water. If you accidentally eat something you shouldn't, like that, you become unclean and unacceptable before God. That was the rules. But remember, there's a difference between an invitation and the command. An invitation and an obligation. And the Pharisees of Jesus' time, and I would dare say sometimes our own churches and religious institutions, have made something that is more restrictive than it needs to be. And so when the disciples are picking grain, they're told, why are you doing that? That's breaking the law. You're breaking the law of the Sabbath. That's the 10 Commandments. You can't do that. That's not proper. Why are you wearing shorts in church? Oops. Why are you not wearing a tie? Why are you not doing this or that or the other thing that makes you proper within certain settings? And that's what they were being told. And they're being told off. And they go to Jesus, of course. He's the leader of this whole crazy band. Why are they not observing the Sabbath? And what he says is this. He pulls up this historical precedent of David. When he was with his men fleeing from Saul, he goes into the temple and eats the consecrated bread. God forbid. Not only does he eat it, he gives it to his followers, the men that are with him. This is not bread you're supposed to eat. Now, this will reflect on something later on when we do our communion as to the consecrated bread you're going to eat, but because he did that, he's not supposed to. He broke the rules. Those are the rules. Only the priests are allowed to eat that bread. So why are they eating it? And of course, David's this big hero, right, for the Israelites. And so the Pharisees, that's the kind of thing that they go. And as they mull that over, he says this, and this is the most important part. This phrase that was read for us, this phrase. The Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. So the Son of Man is Lord even of the Sabbath. I actually misnamed this whole sermon to lead you off. The sermon is called Keeping the Sabbath, as if you are supposed to do it. But the truth of every spiritual exercise is this. Every invitation God gives us, whether you see it as an invitation or a command, is that those things are meant to help us. Did you hear the words of Jesus? Sabbath was made for humans, for people, not people for the Sabbath. God has placed us in precedence. And what he asks of us and invites us to do in our lives are meant for our good. Of course, we have the choice not to do it. And this is the truth of every spiritual practice. You can either follow it out of obligation and compulsion, or you follow it out of freedom and affection for God and those around you. Every single command of the Bible will feel either one way or the other. It will be either the Exodus understanding, the original understanding, or a reinterpretation from Deuteronomy. Which one is it for you? When you pray, is it out of obligation or because you want to talk to God? When you read the scriptures, is it because you feel you should become a better Christian? Or because you want to learn about Him? When you come here to this place of worship, is it because you should? Or because you want to? Our wants are hard to shape. And that is why instructions are given, like Sabbath, like the Ten Commandments, like all the teachings of Jesus, like the teachings of Scripture. They are meant not to harm us, not to put us in a box, but to open up the box that holds us. So how? How does the Sabbath keep us? And this is now the more sharing portion of my Sabbath. Because as you know, I've been away for 3 months and then 2 months. And this is something that the church has allowed for me, and I'm very grateful. But I want to share with you how the Sabbath or sabbatical has kept me. Now, the difference between sabbatical and Sabbath is obviously very simple. It's about time. A Sabbath is a day that you set aside to do and find these things. But a sabbatical is a much more extended time. But they are related because their movements and their intentions are the same. So let's visit this. Number 1, Sabbath reminds me of who I am and whose I am. In other words, I would say that the value of who you are is no longer conditional in the space of Sabbath. You are not defined or valued for your labor, your output, your production. You are valued simply for who you are. And when you observe Sabbath in any of its forms, you are actually living very counterculturally to our world and its values. Ones that demand that you perform to a particular standard to be accepted. So what did I do? Well, I spent time with my dad. That's someone I belong to, of course. And one of the things I did was I bought him a Lego train set, not Lego branded, but you know, they finished their patent on that. So my dad worked on that, and I got to interact with him, and I got to ask him a lot of questions about his childhood, and I learned a lot of things about him. The things that motivated him, things that hurt him, things that he carries even to this day. Helps me understand why he is the way he is with my mother, or with me. His character, I was able to connect with him. So that was something that came out of Sabbath, of knowing whose I was in a way. I spent time with family, of course, my kids and their partners, and of course Jen's not here because she was in Singapore. We'll see more of that later on. I dug up some interesting things about who I am as well, besides belonging to my family. I found this, or I was reminded of this. You can figure out which one's me. Oh, some guy up here. So, hello, Jack. Yeah, I'm 8 years old. This is in Hong Kong. And this is my uncle and my brother. And it just reminds me of the fact that I was actually born in Hong Kong. But I moved away when I was 2 years old. I have deep relationships with these people here. And this next one will tell you a little bit more about my heritage, as I had a chance to dig it up. So, you know these two folks over here, you know what I mean? That was the uncle in the previous picture, this one. And then this is my other uncle, another one of my uncles, my youngest uncle, and the youngest aunt I have. So these two are at the end of my father's family of 7. I found this picture in my uncle's living room. Some of these are the same people. This little girl is her. And this boy is this uncle. And this little boy is this uncle. Now, this person is not rando. He's my aunt's husband, so he's a good guy too. This is my father. This is his oldest brother, who actually recently passed away in the past year. This is Uncle Stephen. Those of you who know Ed Ing, that's his dad. And this is my Aunt Esther, who is in Edmonton. This is my grandfather. So when I returned to Hong Kong, during the first part of my sabbatical, I was able to connect with these folks. I was able to see this picture. And the fascinating thing about this picture is this. You begin to realize and remember that we were all children. Your parents were children once as small as this. Your grandparents were children like this once. And you have to ask yourself, what happens to them? And where are they now? And who are they today? What shaped their lives in the same way as I asked my father what shaped his? I heard from him that my grandmother was quite severe disciplinary. And it left a mark on the family. The obligations, the pressures, the values, the conditions. This is my uncle, who was in the previous picture as well. And one of the things I was able to value was spending time with him. He had just lost his wife this past year. And he was hurt still. We lived with him. He was very gracious. We were able to live with him. And we spent a lot of time. We spent breakfast times together. And in that time, I heard his stories, how he feels. And it's just a time to connect with my uncle in a way I've never connected with him before. He took us to, places around Hong Kong, but what was the most valued thing was not the beautiful places or the yummy food, like this, that we enjoyed, but it's getting to know him. To know that boy who is in that big black and white picture. And for him to know me. Now, this is in the middle of Hong Kong as well, and the thing I want to show you is this building. Nothing spectacular about it. But the previous family I showed you were on my father's side. Those were his siblings. But in this building was where my mother's parents lived. My grandmother and grandfather. And they have a very interesting story. Eudora and I were looking for a simple, trashy restaurant to go to in Hong Kong, and they told us there's one here. As I walked down the street, I thought I recognized it from when I visited it over 30 years ago. And sure enough, I called my aunt and I go, where did Grandma and Grandpa used to live? And they're passed on now. And she said, it's on that street. It's in that building. So I was right. It was this building, this one right here, in the background. And I took a photo with it. And the thing about their story is this, about my roots, is that my parents were the first Christians in the family. My grandmother and grandfather, on both sides, were not Christians. They did not follow Jesus. They did not know the gospel. What happened was that both of my grandparents eventually became believers late in their life. Because my mother and father returned to Hong Kong after over 20 years in Canada so they could share with them who Jesus was, to bring them to faith, to be in relationship with him, to share these stories. The amazing thing is, we thought my grandmother would become Christian first because she was happy to go to church and socialize and do these things, while my grandfather had dementia and perhaps even Alzheimer's. He was kept in a pretty crappy kind of old folks pen. It's not even a home. I couldn't call it that. It was a bunch of cubicles where they put old people. And my mother would visit him every day. And he couldn't remember a thing. He was like a child. Sometimes he wouldn't even recognize her. But she kept on asking him who he believed in. And she would keep on telling him about the gospel, about how he's loved. Not for what he does, but for who he is by God. And sure enough, one day he says, I believe in Jesus. My mom goes, okay. She's very excited about that. But remember, this man cannot remember who she is. He can't remember what happened right before. So she holds this loosely. And so the next day she visits him again, or next time she visits him again, she goes, okay, so who do you believe in? I believe in Jesus. And he never changed the answer since that day. God can reach someone who, for us, their minds aren't there. Can reach someone who is put in the pen with other old people like cattle. And yet, they can know the love of God. They can have a spiritual life. And so as I think about that, there's bittersweetness to that, given the situations that they were in and so on. But it reminds me that these are my roots too. These people's lives are not beyond changing. My parents had prayed for my grandparents for decades. This is the opposite. Someone who's young, my niece in Toronto, who I got to visit as well in the second half of my trip. Then I had some, a lot of times you're with people and you're with family and you never have a real conversation. But I was able to have some really good and deep conversations with my niece. And get to know who she was, who she wants to be, and her gifts and her talents, and to encourage her and to spend time with her. My brother and his family in Toronto, I got to visit the church there because my sister-in-law works in the administration of this church that I was able to visit. My brother is also part of the AV team, like a volunteer, and the daughters are also in that church community, so I was able to see them. I also got a chance to go take a vacation in Halifax. Now, this is not the most scenic thing in Halifax. But this little person here is Eudora. She was born in Halifax. And I believe, is this the house, this is the apartment building you lived in? It's still there, crazily. Decades later, we'll see how many. But she had roots that I could visit now. I saw where she came from. And that was exciting to me. Even though the building is not like the Citadel or anything else up there. Or the harbor front. And on the way back, we got to visit the prairies. This is what the prairies look like. This is probably... What? There are towns! But the towns obstruct this view. That's the problem. There are towns, there are buildings, people live there, there's running water, all that stuff. But it's the beauty of the prairies. For those of us who are from there or know it, you can see the horizon. You can see everything coming at you. And and there's something about it. For me, I remember I'm a prairie boy. And out of all this who we are, well, I got to travel with Eudora. Right, so, and that's who I belong to in a lot of ways too, in my life. And we ask ourselves who we belong. That's what Sabbath is for. This is the first thing. And then I become who I will become. And I am who I am. Not who you want me to be, not who others tell me I need to be. I am the person that God wants me to be in my present, and I trust Him to lead me into these other spaces. Number 2, Sabbath lets me learn and experience new things. I bought myself actually an espresso maker. So if you come over, please, not when everyone asks me, because it takes me like 10 minutes to make a single coffee. It's not great. But I thought I learned something new. How to make espresso. I had a chance to put on my Jets jersey and go to a hockey game with Greg, which is great, because that's new. I don't go to hockey games. Who's got time for that? I've got evenings, and who can afford that, right? There's a lot of things going on with that. If I can get there, I do. And this is the first time I think I've been in an arena for decades. This is another arena. Now, some of you know I actually practice Muay Thai. And I've been doing it for over 10 years. And I actually got to go to one of the Muay Thai stadiums in Bangkok by myself, because Eudora and Jen were not interested. And I got to watch fights there, in one of the premier places where you would watch Muay Thai fights. I got to try interesting foods. This is durian. It's okay. Some people hate it, some people love it. I'm like, I'm undecided. I mean, but it was different. I got to visit friends. This is in Toronto. This is Toronto Museum of Illusions. I'll let you figure that one out. Oh, and in Toronto, I had the best smoked meat sandwich I've ever had anywhere in the world. It's down at St. Lawrence Market. I don't remember the name of it. It's in the back. I have to say, it was ridiculous, and I still dream about it. This is me in Peggy's Cove. You know, you hear about it, and in Nova Scotia with Jen and Eudora and myself. And yeah, there's some things you find that you want to eat, but then there's things you find that you don't want to eat. Some people love this. This shellfish is all this. It's basically dried seaweed, and it's cleaned, I guess, and then it tastes salty, and it tastes like you're eating the sea. So if you like it, you like it. If you don't, well. Two other neat things is I did become the chair of the board of InterVarsity in Canada, and that has particular sort of responsibilities. And these These are all friends, people I didn't know. I maybe knew like 1, 2, 3 of these people. Dave, you know, from our church. Karis, I know from here locally. And then over here is my friend from college, university. So this was something new for me, and I'm enjoying it. And it actually helps me to be a better leader here in our church as well. This is a bunch of pastors here in Vancouver. You recognize this room at my house. This is Jerry Huang. He is the new dean at Regent. And something new I scraped out of my plate was I'm teaching half of a course in Regent in September. So that's new for me as well. I've taught before as a professor of record for guided independent studies in another seminary, but this is my first time doing it at Regent, so that will be new. So I get to do new things. And why is that important, other than who we belong to and who we are? God is always inviting you to something else. Always. We just don't often listen. Or we don't create the space that sometimes where he taps us on the shoulder and says, try this. Not just adults. Try this. And so, when you Sabbath, you are creating time to listen and to find if God is inviting you to something new. The last thing I'm going to share with you is Sabbath lets me see God everywhere. This is Bangkok. We got to go to this, because it was actually the closest church to where we were staying, and they're having baptisms. And it appeared that my in-laws, Evan's wife's family, had gone here when they were stationed in Bangkok. And there's Christians there. You know this fella? Some of you know this guy. He used to come here. He's in Singapore now, and he's serving with Power to Change or Crew out in Singapore. So if you want to support him, look him up. I got to meet with him in Singapore. I got to meet with one of his former pastors who's now here in Vancouver. He just moved here, but this is in Singapore as well. I got to connect with him, and he's now here. So I see God at work. These people are people I never even met before in my life. I met them online. They were old Christian, Chinese Christian fellowship members. They're a different generation than myself. But when I told them I was coming to Singapore, they said, let's meet up. And I got to go hiking with them in like 40-degree weather. It was brutal. But, you know, they're older and they're going, this is great. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm dying. So I met with them. This is the Bishop of Hong Kong, who actually also happens to be Eudora's uncle. Or cousin, sorry, not uncle. Yeah, her uncle's son. So there's a lot of priests. He's the bishop. And so here we are, one's more dressed religiously than the other. But you know what? Because of Sabbath, I know Jesus is fine. This is Joanna, also someone who was in our church. This is a friend of mine. I knew him since high school in Vancouver. And we visited them in Hong Kong. They knew each other. And if you know Joanna, and of course her husband is now working with prison ministries in Hong Kong. You know this fella, some of you. This is Shannon, who came to visit us as well as a student, also back in Hong Kong, and we visited a church, and he was there as well. So we got to meet up with him and say hello. This is an old friend from Ottawa. We hadn't seen each other for over 30 years. But there's a little bit of story because his son got to know Evan, my son, and they became really good friends. In fact, Evan actually went to the UK past week to visit his son. And I haven't seen or even talked to him in 30 years, my friend John. But we connected again. We talked about old times and all the time that has passed between us since those 30 years went by. Of course, and this is a bit cheating because this is between my two times. But God is everywhere, and we know these two folks, and of course Diana. Brendan has just made his way back to Texas and so on. But part of why I say God is everywhere is that wherever I go, wherever these people go, I recognize His goodness, that He is at work in the world. And he will be at work in the world through Brendan and Jaden as well, as much as through Diana and myself and each of you. Our church has a future. And to be honest, I love being back here. The sabbatical for me, a lot of people say, oh no, you're going back to work now. You must be terrible. And I go, no, I can't wait to get back to work. I can't wait because all my friends are here, right? You are my friends, and we are becoming what God calls us to be in our time, in our place. I'm excited to be back because I know that there is a direction that He is going to call us to. What Sabbath does is it reminds us that God is at work in the world. God is at work in our lives. What Sabbath does is this. There is a term called functional atheism. That we go to church, we say we believe in God, but really the way that we live our lives is as if He didn't exist at all. What Sabbath keeps us in is a life of true faith. It creates time for us in which we are reminded so that we don't become functional atheists, but we become functional Christians. Truly, all the time. So, remember this if you remember anything. You're invited to keep the Sabbath. But when you take that time to find yourself, to listen to the new things that God might be presenting to you, and to notice where He is in your life and our lives together, it keeps you. Let's pray together.